So yeah, we're going to look at 8 tips today, and some of them may seem very obvious. For example, number 1 here, introduce yourself. Now, again, I'll just read this to you. It's important for everyone on the call to know who is participating. So you should briefly introduce yourself when you join the call. How you introduce yourself depends on the situation. In some cases, just give your name and position. And on other virtual meetings, you might need to provide some more information about your job. Now, that might seem very obvious, but again, if you're on a call with a client, I work in sales, I do lots of sales. And for me, it's very important to remind clients of my name again and again and again. Then they go away from that sales meeting. They think, Lawrence, yeah, that was his name. Lawrence, it's Lawrence. Okay, Lawrence at NextGen Corporate Language Training. Just having that repetition of my name and my company will keep me top of the list of vendors that they hope to choose for their internal training plans. Like if you're talking internally to internal stakeholders, maybe senior management, regional team, they might not know you. They might have received some emails from you. They might know possibly what your job title is, but they might not know what you do. So really having a professional introduction where you can present yourself with confidence to demonstrate your value to the organization. And then again, demonstrate your leadership potential. I think it's kind of key. And so, yeah, it seems obvious, but I think a lot of people sometimes forget and say, oh yeah, hi, Lawrence here from the legal department. Yeah, I'd just like to say, and it doesn't really come across as, that person. I want to know more about that person. And I guess that comes to building your personal brand in an organization. If you do something like this, have a virtual background, maybe put your name up there, really you're starting to develop a personal brand within the organization or externally that people will just be drawn to, and they will have more confidence in you, and you will build your credibility as a partner and therefore your trust as a partner. Point number 2 is similar, but the idea is that once you've done your introduction at the beginning, that every time you speak, you introduce your name again. Lawrence here, Taipei office. I'd just like to make a quick point. Francis, you mentioned, so yeah, don't just repeat your name, but repeat the name of the person that you want to pick out. Jessica, I know that you were talking about our sales revenue in Japan earlier. I'd just like to ask you a quick question. Or Edison, I can see you sitting there in the Tokyo office. I'd like to make a quick point. Lawrence here, so yeah, just constant names. Again, the idea, especially if we don't have the video, it just makes what we call turn taking in communication, it makes that a lot smoother. Okay, I just want to check the participant box. Yeah, we're still good, no one's waiting. Okay, so yeah, whether you're making a comment, asking a question, always state your name first. If you're making a comment for everyone, just state your name. If you're responding to someone, or just if you want to make a comment or ask on someone on the call, you must also state that person's name. Is it turn taking? So Francis, you had a question there. Is it turn taking? So yeah, it's a kind of, I suppose in English language, communication skills, turn taking is just, who's going? You, me? And especially, I think as Ivy mentioned earlier, if you don't have the non-verbal communication, you can't see people, then your turn taking needs to be kind of extra smart. So you need to leave long pauses. You need to state your name before you speak. You need to state the name of the other person who you're speaking to. You need to structure the way that you speak. Hi everyone, Lawrence here in the Taipei office. There are 3 things I'd like to talk about. Firstly, secondly, thirdly. Okay, those are the 3 things I'd like to talk about. Francis, over to you. Okay, so you see what I mean? So you've got to be really, really structured in the way that you speak when you're on a conference call, because yeah, it is really difficult to have that turn taking, the kind of natural turn taking that we have in face-to-face communication. Okay, so I thought I'd introduce some of the language that we can use to introduce ourselves professionally and to kind of establish that credibility. So, you know, again, maybe it's obvious for some of you, a lot of your English is very high quality already, but you might begin, hi, my name is Lawrence James, and I'm the Senior Business Development Manager at NextGen Corporate Language Training. I'm based in Taipei, but I spend a lot of time in Singapore consulting for the British Council. My main responsibility is driving business growth in Europe. Okay, so fairly concise. Establishing my credibility, I suppose, as somebody who works in a regional position, explaining my full name, explaining my full job title, and some of my responsibilities. Okay, so that's kind of like a fairly concise, but enough information. So what I've got here, you might need to move some of your windows around in front of you. What I've got here, I'm just going to shut down my chat so I can see the whole screen, are other examples of language that we can use. So we'll just have a quick look through some of this. So yeah, my name is Lawrence. I work in our Taipei office. I deal with our financial consulting business with clients in Southeast Asia. I handle marketing for Europe from Taipei. I'm based in Hong Kong. I'm responsible for managing a team of financial professionals who deliver consulting services in Asia. I focus on, my top priority is to drive business growth in Europe. Okay, so you can see we've got some really nice examples of professional business language here that we can use to introduce ourselves, establish our credibility, and demonstrate our leadership potential on a call. I'm just going to mute Lin Yan there. I could hear her telephone call. So you can see the language in front of you. What I'd like each of you to do right now is to look at the language here and think about your own jobs, or you can create a dream job if you're worried about confidentiality on a call, and use some of this language to introduce yourselves. And then I'm going to pick 2 or 3 people just to demonstrate their leadership and take advantage of opportunities to contribute to a meeting. I'm going to ask 3 or 4 of you to introduce yourselves. Okay, so hopefully you've got a pen, or you can just do this in your mind.
So I'm ready.
Okay, great. So Lenskin, let's hear from you.
My name is Lenskin. I work in the Taipei office. I'm in charge of the project MP5000. So I will discuss the status of this project.
Very good. Okay, so you're in charge of yep, very nice. So just remember, when you say I'm in charge of, just try and repeat that. I'm in charge of.
I'm in charge of.
Yeah, and try and get the M. I'm in charge of.
I'm in charge of.
Very good. Okay.
In
English, everything is linked together. Okay. And the M links over to the I. So I'm in charge of. Okay, very good. So who's next? I think Francis, I could see you working diligently, very hard. Could you unmute your mic and give us an example?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Francis, and I am engineer with MediaTek based in Taipei. I handle LCD driver project, and my top priority is to keep our product in mass production in this November.
Francis, that's very good. Well, the only advice that I would give you is that your microphone or whatever technology you're using is a little bit quiet, and so people on the call might have a little trouble hearing you. Okay, but the English was perfect. Okay, very good. Let's ask Claire. I can't see you. Are you there? Could you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Claire. I am the product manager at KKday, and I'm based in Taipei. I'm in charge of the products in Europe and in America.
Okay, very nice.
That's it.
Oh, that's it? Okay, good. And we'll have one more. Does anybody want to go, or should I just pick on one more person?
May I try?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Yan Ling. I'm the project manager at ITRI, and I work in Zhudong. I'm in charge of communication between RD in our laboratories and potential investors. And my top priority is to promote the product to potential investor and let them to create new company to sell the product.
Okay, really nice. Thank you very much for taking the initiative to introduce yourself there, Lin Yan.
Is it clear?
Claire?
Is it clear?
Is it clear?
Yes.
It's actually perfect. The one thing I would say is that, are you introducing one product or many products?
Many products.
Yeah, so it's a little bit difficult, but try and have that products.
Oh, okay.
Products. So I'm in charge of introducing new products to ...
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, so there you can see that with some functional language, with some professional language like you have in front of you, you can very quickly present yourself in a very professional way. And yeah, when each of you introduced yourself there, I felt you established your credibility, your trustworthiness very, very well. Okay. Good. So in our face-to-face training, obviously, we provide you with training kits where we print out all of this useful language. I will create an ebook from today's session, which I'll send to you and as a PDF. So you don't have to worry about writing everything down here or taking photos. I'll make an ebook for you and you can download that from our members area on our website. Okay. Good. So yeah, once you've introduced yourself, yeah, maybe you'll be dealing with interruptions. I actually took a slide out here because one of our last sessions was on conference calls, which we agreed a conference call was more kind of just audio and a virtual meeting was more video based. You know, I'm not sure if you agree with that, but I think when we were discussing this program, we said, well, really, if you're audio only, I think it's actually not very good communication to interrupt at all, because there is that lack of visual communication. But I think when you have that visual communication, it is okay to interrupt. Not only is it okay to interrupt, but actually, and I think this may be a Western idea, interrupting, making comments is actually, what's really needed. I probably 2 or 3 times a month am approached by managers or senior managers from international companies. And they say to me, Lawrence, I have a team, but in meetings, they are not contributing to meetings. Why is that? Well, I say, well, I mean, traditionally in a meeting, in maybe a more traditional company, the idea is that the manager will present information, people will listen and then go away. And maybe they'll talk with their colleagues afterwards and they'll come up with some kind of strategy after the meeting. So yeah, I think there's company culture, there's country culture, there's individual culture, but in general, yeah, I'd say in a Western organization, or at least a Western manager might expect lots of interruptions and lots of comments and questions. In the same way that on this call today, this virtual meeting, it's really good for me. And I feel a little bit kind of awkward when I post a question or I expect some contribution, there's nothing comes back. But anyway, so dealing with interruptions. So yeah, just make it clear at the beginning that after you're finished speaking, the other people on the call can ask questions or make comments. And as I mentioned earlier, structure your language in a way that makes it clear how long you will speak for. So maybe I can just explain this a little bit. So the first point here is that you might say, hi everyone, this is Lawrence here in the Taipei office. I just want to make a quick point. I've got a few slides to show you, and it's going to take me about 2 minutes to present this information. Rather than interrupt during my presentation, I'd just like to take questions at the end. Okay, so just say something like that. Or you can structure your language in a slightly different way. You can say, hi everyone, I'm just going to speak for a few minutes. I've got 3 points that I'd like to make. So this is what I mentioned earlier. Firstly, I'd like to point out that the marketing strategy in the Southeast Asia region seems to be struggling a little bit. Secondly, thirdly, okay, so that's the end of my point. I'd like to invite some comments and questions now. So yeah, I think it's better on a conference call to avoid kind of lots and lots of interruptions or a virtual meeting because yeah, the lack of nonverbal communication makes it difficult. So you as a communicator need to demonstrate that you are in charge of that conversation and are managing that conversation, and people will be able to have a better flow. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat room down here. Lin Yen, you have a question. May I ask how to create your virtual background and show it during a meeting? Lin Yen, yes, you may. I'll talk about that maybe at the end in our kind of Q&A or just at the end because it's not directly relevant, but you can have it moving as well. So it can be a dynamic virtual background or it can be a static virtual background. I can show you how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's dealing with interruptions. Yeah. So just to summarize, tell people how they can interrupt, manage that conversation, take control of the situation. Okay, number 4, speak concisely. Okay, so concisely means keep it short. Okay, don't go on and on and on. We all know people who like to talk too much. In English, you call it rambling. I mean, I might be doing it now. But yeah, use shorter sentences. In general, in international communication, try to use simple language, simple vocabulary. A very easy way of knowing whether it's simple or complicated is the length of the word. And I know it sounds kind of basic, but technically we call it multi-syllabic vocabulary. The longer the word, normally, the more difficult it is to understand. So yeah, use plain English, use short sentences. I mean, from a grammatical point of view, and I'm sure all of you know your grammar very well, avoid using kind of passive sentences. Try and use more active sentences. So I would like to say, rather than using a passive voice. So how do I change that into passive? It has been said that, so just using kind of passive language is a little bit difficult to understand and also to communicate. And yeah, organize your points clearly and communicate them concisely. Now, I made a note on my, my kind of lesson plan down here is speak concisely, but, okay, and I just want to kind of point out a few things here. Speaking concisely doesn't mean being very direct, okay? Speaking concisely doesn't mean that you can't be polite, okay? So, and I say this, I think, to a room of Taiwanese people here, because when you translate Chinese into English, it sounds very direct, okay? Especially from a British perspective, where we tend to use very indirect language. Okay, so there, for example, I said where we tend to use very indirect language. So I'm being very careful with the way that I speak. So yeah, use careful language. I might consider doing that, so use a little bit careful language. Be diplomatic. So think about other people, think about other pressures that people have in the room. Consider, the different perspectives in the room. And be respectful, I suppose. Now, Francis says there, how can I be indirect? It's a good question. But in some of the language I'm going to show you shortly, there's some examples of indirect language. And actually, I think we have a training course called Fast Track to Leadership. We look a lot at indirect language. So keep an eye out for that. We might do some free sessions on that program later on. So yeah, the idea is that speak concisely, but yeah, remember that don't be too direct. Now here, again, obvious point, maybe number 5, speak clearly, loudly, and slightly slower. Now, feedback that I always get from my manager, especially when I'm delivering training to non-native speakers, is that I speak too quickly, and I'm making an effort now to slow down. Now, for me, I suppose I was in Singapore for 3 years, And in Singapore, I don't know if you've ever worked with anybody from Singapore, they speak very quickly, okay? So I think my speed is kind of like at Singapore pace right now. So yeah, I need to remind myself to go slowly. And I mean, on that point, you've all got managers or colleagues or whatever. Ask them to observe you on a virtual call and give you some feedback afterwards. Sometimes it's difficult for us to be self-aware enough to know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. I mean, I'm recording this meeting right now. The reason is I'm going to give it to my manager tomorrow. He's going to look through this and then give me feedback, right? Now, if you have a colleague, a nice colleague or a friend or a manager, ask them to observe you and give you feedback, because it's all developmental, all right? Hopefully after my feedback tomorrow, my next session will be better and better and better, okay? That's that kind of feedback loop that you want to have in an organization. So yeah, if you're going to speak for a few minutes, it's a good idea to pause between points to allow other people to comment. Okay. Don't take too much time. Number 6, be aware of your talking time. Don't take up a lot of valuable time talking. Remember to get to your point quickly and allow others to speak. Make sure you're not dominating the discussion. Ask for ideas from other people. Now, I mean, this is a difficult one because I can see Francis and I can see Lenskin. And if one of them raises their hand, I can tell if they want to speak, or I can tell if they want to contribute. Now, there are a few ways on a virtual call. Yeah, sometimes there's actually a function on Zoom where you can, I think, raise a hand, okay? So you can use the technology. You can literally raise your hand and wait for the speaker to notice you. But for those of you like Lin Yan, Claire, Karen, Ivy, Edison, Nini, I can't see you at all. I have no idea if you're listening to me. You might be cooking dinner. So it's really difficult for me to know if I'm dominating the conversation or not. So again, if you have that technology available, have your cameras open and it'll make the flow of communication far more simple, okay? Far more effective. Hey, there we go. She got my point. Hello, how are you? It's nice to see you. Claire.
Me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We can
I'm
all
good.
see you now. Hello.
Hi.
Okay. Point number 7. I feel like I might have chopped out a slide or two here. Yeah, I think I've missed a couple of slides where we can do some extra practice. Let me just see. Okay, well. So yeah, point number 7 then is to ask questions and make comments. Here, whereas in a presentation, it may be more appropriate to sit quietly and wait for an interval for questions and comments. In a virtual meeting, most Western colleagues will expect input from you. Not only does providing input allow for productive conversations to take place, but you're also demonstrating your leadership skills. You're not just a passive follower. You are proactive, creative, able to think on your feet, and willing to speak up when others stay quiet, okay? Now, I mean, I studied languages at university. I studied French and German, and I speak a tiny bit of Chinese now. Nini, hello.
Hello.
This is much better now. See, I'm already happy. I can already see more people, and we can have much more interaction. Karen, I can see you there over in Hong Kong, is it? Hi. Okay, so we can see more people. That's much nicer. And I mean, I think I mentioned this earlier. When there's an opportunity, take the opportunity to interrupt, ask a question, comment. This idea that you are, you're able to think on your feet and you're not just going to sit there and wait for the meeting to finish. You know, you're being paid to be in that meeting to contribute ideas, okay? And that's me speaking from a Western perspective, okay? Maybe if you work in a kind of more traditional Japanese meeting company, that might not be the most appropriate to kind of be interrupting all the time. You might be seen as, I don't know, aggressive or a time waster or whatever. But I'd say if you're working in an international company, a Western international company, yeah, definitely take opportunities. And yeah, you will get noticed, you know, like someone in the leadership team will say, ha, Nini, I saw her. She's got lots of books in the background. She's a reader. She's very smart. Okay. So, you know, simple things, simple little nudges, psychological nudges that will make people become more convinced in you as a partner. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, God, what time are we on? I'm just going to check the time. 8:50. Kind of. Yeah, we might finish a little early. Okay. So yeah, we're just going to look now at a little section here on how you ask questions. Okay. Now, asking questions, again, might seem very, very obvious. If you go all the way down to point 4 in front of you, here's the question, right? How do you plan to increase our sales? Okay, that's the question. But that's in point 4 here, okay? Before you ask the question, you need to go through several steps before you do that, okay? You need to introduce yourself so that people know who's speaking and where you're from. You need to then direct the question. Who are you going to talk? Who are you asking the question to? You need to provide context, because maybe you're asking a question about something that we were talking about 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago. And then you need to ask the question politely. And Francis, this is where we're looking at some of that indirect language. Okay, so this is Tom Lee from the Taipei office. Peter, I'd like to ask you a quick question. Or Lenskin, I'd like to ask you a quick question. So as soon as if you hear that, Lenskin, it's like, oh, okay, it's on me now. I've got to listen carefully and I got to prepare to contribute, okay? You brought up the issue of sales 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, 50 minutes ago. Give them context. They know exactly what your question is about. Would you mind telling me how you plan to increase our sales? Now, here I think is the difference maybe between Chinese English, Chinglish, and especially British English, is that we'll use this indirect language. Would you mind telling me? Mm-hmm. I guess in Chinese, what would you say? Like, 请问. You might say, like, whatever that means in English, 请问, or da 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 da. But in English, we've got a long phrase there. Would you mind telling me? Or could you tell me? Or do you know how? So yeah, just use some kind of like slightly indirect language there. So yeah, just once again, because this is kind of important. This is Lawrence James from the Japan office. Claire, I'd like to ask you a quick question. You brought up the issue of sales. Would you mind telling me how you plan to increase our sales? Okay, so also it's kind of tactical. You know, I guess it's a careful balance of speaking concisely, but also going through this process, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm giving Claire time to think of her answer. You know, if I just say, Claire, how do you plan to increase our sales? God, okay, no time to think, right? But if I say, hi, Lawrence here from the Taipei office. Claire, I'd like to ask you a quick question. Claire's thinking, oh my God, I've got time. Okay, you brought up the issue of sales. Claire's thinking, okay, sales, what did I say? Would you mind telling me how you plan to increase our sales? Okay, so Claire has had maybe 5 seconds extra to think of a convincing answer to my question there, okay? So yeah, it's not just good communication from my part, but also it will help my listener, because communication is two-way and people forget that. Especially, you know, like I teach communication skills. Your foreign manager or your foreign colleague might not have good communication skills. Learning a language is one thing. Being a native speaker is one thing. Being a good communicator is another. Just because you have native level of English doesn't mean you're a good communicator, okay? So I guess my point is that, yeah, maybe you're in a meeting, it's not your fault, okay? Your foreign manager or your foreign colleague doesn't know how to ask questions on a virtual meeting to non-native speakers of English. And perhaps you can then say, hi, sorry, Peter, would you mind just repeating that question? I didn't quite follow you, okay? So then you can use language to, again, manage the conversation and take control of that situation. Okay, so here is, yeah, that kind of 4-step structure then for asking questions in a meeting. On the next slide, again, I've introduced some of the language that we teach in our face-to-face training. So I'm just going to, again, move my chat box and participant box so I can see this clearly. So here we've got some options. So this is Tom Lee from the Taipei office on the far left there. I have a question for you, Nini. Nini, you highlighted our sales. Could you tell me how you plan to increase our sales? Okay, so there, another example. Don't worry, I'm not actually asking you to fix my sales issues at Next Gen Corporate Language Training. That's my job. Okay, other examples. Hi, Lawrence here from the Taipei office. I'd like to ask Karen a question about this. Karen, you described our sales. I'd like to know how you plan to increase our sales. Okay, so yeah, I'm repeating it again and again. I've got the name 2 or 3 times. I'm going slowly. Karen has a little bit of time to stop looking at Facebook and to focus on sales. Okay, so yeah, here's some nice example of professional language. And I mean, if we look here, talked about, mentioned, brought up, highlighted, described. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways to say the same thing. Now, from a communication point of view, using a variety of language will help you seem more interesting. Okay, if you say you talked about sales, you talked about marketing, you talked about this, you talked about that, very quickly I'll get bored of listening to you. Okay, if you can use a variety of language, especially like brought up. Brought up is, again, I have an English teaching background. Brought up is a phrasal verb. I'm sure you Taiwanese people, very good grammar. You study a lot of grammar in school. A phrasal verb is a verb plus a preposition, okay? Brought up. Now, brought up actually is also idiomatic English. In the same way that it's raining cats and dogs, right? You say it's raining cats and dogs. Brought up is another kind of idiom. And idioms in English will make your English sound higher level, okay? Just saying you talked about, you mentioned, but yeah, if you start to use idiomatic language, you brought up the issue of sales, your English goes from here to here, okay? Yeah, so I mean, in our company, we don't focus a lot on grammar. It's a bad habit of mine to introduce these points in a grammatical point of view. But yeah, using a variety of language can really capture the attention of the audience. And again, Francis, you asked earlier, how can I be indirect? So here, these phrases highlighted on the far right, I'd like to know how. Yeah, rather than how are you going to increase our sales? I would like to know how. Okay, so I would like, polite phrase there, know how. Could you tell me? Okay, again, indirect language. And even earlier, we've got here, I would like to ask Mary a question. Okay, so that's indirect language there. And, you know, I did a session on interpersonal skills last week. So interpersonal skills is, you know, managing the emotions between, well, your own emotions and also the emotions of the people that you're speaking with. I think sometimes people don't want to contribute in a meeting because they don't feel safe. I don't know if you agree with me or not. Sometimes the person leading that meeting hasn't made people feel like they want to contribute. Now, most study and research shows these days that organizations will grow and people will be engaged and want to stay in an organization if they feel valued. Now, it might seem like a long shot, but using indirect language can actually make people feel happier and more welcome and more accepted in meeting, okay? Hold on, I'm getting some notifications up here. What's that saying? Is this the chat room? Oh, the chat room is blowing up. Okay, Karen, I'd like to know, how did you answer the question? The plan to increase sales to Brian. Okay, Karen, I'll talk to you about my sales strategy after the meeting, okay? And then, sorry to interrupt, James. I have a question. I would like to know if there's a structure to answer questions. There is, but we're not going to talk about it today, or we might do. I mean, basically, when questions come up, Francis, I'll try and deal with this now. Always thank the person for asking the question, and always show empathy. You know, try and demonstrate your awareness of why they asked that question. So you might say, thank you very much for asking that question, Francis. I understand why you might be concerned about that. Let me answer you by saying ... Okay, so I think a little structure there is thank the person for their question. Very nice. 2, show appreciation or empathy. Yeah, I think empathy is the key word there. I understand, or I can't think of another way right now. And then structure it, say, I'd like to answer the question in this way, and then answer the question. And Francis, thank you for being my co-host there and typing out the structure for everybody in the chat box. Yeah, I mean, actually, when we're doing webinars for B2B, often we'll have 2 presenters on the call. One will manage the chat box and one will do the face-to-face, because managing both can be a challenge. Okay, yes, I hope that answers your question, Francis. Be polite, show empathy, be indirect, answer the question, essentially. So yeah, I guess getting back to my point then, yeah, using language like this can make people feel safe and welcome and want to provide comments or information in a meeting. And yeah, if you want to increase engagement and make sure your people are staying in your organization, this is the kind of language you should be using. All right. Oh, good. Okay. So yeah, be careful with your tone. I put this right to the end, actually. Be careful with your tone. So your tone is the voice that the way that you speak. So according to research, people pay closer attention to vocal cues than facial expressions or body language. That means the others on the conference call will make judgments about your attitude, your opinion, your ideas based on the tone of your voice. Be careful to give the correct impression using your tone. I think I'd like to kind of pause and explore this idea a little bit right now. I think, I'm a language learner too. I studied German, I studied French for 18 years. I lived in both countries. I worked in both countries. And I think because a lack of confidence in myself and my language ability, when I spoke a foreign language, I would be very quiet, timid voice. My voice may be very flat because I'm too scared to use kind of more natural intonation patterns that you find in a foreign language. Just the idea of sounding French, like using that kind of French intonation, that French tone. I was too shy to do it because I had a lack of confidence in myself and my language ability. Now, I think the same is probably true of a Taiwanese person speaking English. You're in a meeting or a conference call, you're not going to be kind of going, hi, yes, my name is Lawrence James. Nice to meet you, everyone. And kind of having that energy, that natural kind of energy that will draw people in, and not just draw people in, but focus attention on different parts of your message. So yeah, that's something that I think we all need to work on when we're speaking a foreign language. And so the idea, is, go slowly when you need to, speed up when you need to, emphasize key words, when you need to. So I just thought I'd give you a little introduction here to maybe how to be a little bit more energetic on a call, I suppose. I mean, you ever watch TV, YouTube channel, people speak very unnaturally. It's like, hi, Lawrence here, Next Gen Corporate Language Training. How are you guys today? Okay, so it's like, wow, 200% energy, and people really hear you and focus on you. You're like, hi, this is Lawrence James from the Taipei office. Nice to see you all here today. So there's something I'd like to point out. I'd like to add something here. Tom brought up sales. I'd just like to point out that our sales have increased by 10%. Oh my God. Okay, falling asleep, right? I've got Facebook open here. I've got LinkedIn open over here. I'm applying for a job over here, and I'm in your meeting. you got to maintain my attention in a much more effective way. And tone of voice, pronunciation is a great way to do that. Now, when we teach our telephone course, we always say that you've got to smile when you pick up the telephone. Hi, Next Gen Corporate Language Training. How may I help you? Okay, so when you smile, people can hear you smiling. Okay, and having that positivity will be reflected on the audience. If I'm positive, you're positive, right? Even just then, I could see Nini kind of start laughing there because I had a smile on my face, right? Claire, now I can see you're starting to have a little smile on your face because everyone is smiling, right? So yeah, like mirroring the idea in psychology that what you're feeling, other people will feel. That's important on a virtual call, right? On a virtual meeting. So yeah, I mean, the idea is have that intonation, have word stress. And I mean, we don't have a lot of time today to talk about all of the ideas in pronunciation, but I'll just kind of demonstrate. So hi, this is Tom Lee from the Taipei office. I'd like to add something here. Tom brought up our sales. I want to highlight the fact that our sales have increased this year. Okay, so you can see there my voice kind of goes up a little bit. I'm trying to pause on sales, highlight some of the key words in the phrase there, and maybe I could have gone a little bit slower too. So this is Tom Lee from the Taipei office. I'd just like to follow up on what Jack said. Jack described our sales. I'd just like to point out that our sales have increased by 10%. Okay, so again, I don't know if that's coming across to you as energetic. Actually, I am a very low-key kind of person, and my parents and family think that my voice is very boring. But yeah, I guess I'm trying to at least portray and give off some energy. Okay, what I'd like to do is for you on the call to look at some of these phrases here, and I'd like you to just show me some energy. Okay, so just read the phrases to me and show me how much energy and you can demonstrate in your pronunciation. Okay, so let's pick. Jessica, we haven't heard from you in a while. Jessica, could you try reading one of these phrases here? And you can go all the way from left to right. And yeah, just give me some energy and positivity, okay?
Okay, this is Jessica from Taipei office.
Keep going.
Lawrence, I would like to make a comment about something you said earlier. You talked about the intonation. It has to be more like attractive, not so flat. But I think that Chinese is sort of a flat. Maybe it's a natural way we speak like that. What do you comment?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Yeah, I think I understand your point. So yeah, we in different languages have different sound systems. First of all, Chinese Mandarin is a syllable time language. So in Chinese Mandarin, every syllable has the same amount of time. I will go to the park tomorrow. Okay, every word will have the same length of time. But in English, we have a different sound. It's called stress timing. So we give more time and more energy to the more important words in a sentence. Okay, so yeah, you're right. There's two fundamental differences between Chinese Mandarin and English that mean that if we just use a Chinese approach when speaking English, it will sound, sometimes it can sound aggressive. Like, you know, when you see, I don't know, it might sound a bit, you know, when you have stereotypes of Chinese people in movies, it's always like da 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 da, very kind of quick, right? If you think about even Spanish, you know, actually Spanish and Chinese Mandarin, they have the same timing in language. And that's why in Spanish, they say it has a machine gun type sound, like da 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 da, like that, okay? So yeah, we need to think about which words we stress. This is, very quickly, this is Tom Lee from the Taipei office. So yeah, from the, no emphasis. This is no emphasis. Tom Lee, more time, more emphasis. Taipei office, more time, more emphasis. This is Tom Lee from the Taipei office. John, I'd like to add something here. So John, like add something. Okay, all those little grammar words you got to forget. Okay, just say them very quietly. And yeah, I mean, we don't have lots of time today, but actually part of my master's was pronunciation in English. And so yeah, if you want to know more about this, perhaps we can chat about it after. Okay, let's try Claire, because I can see you. Could you try
Yes.
reading one of these sentences and yeah, just kind of go like, when you think 100%, go another 50%. Okay, just go crazy.
Okay. This is Tom Lee from the Taipei office. I would like to make a comment about this. Tom brought up our sales. I would just like to point out that our sales have increased by 10%.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. I mean, I'll be fair to you guys. It's difficult to read and do this at the same time because then you're practicing 2 skills, right? You're practicing reading, or 3 skills, speaking, and then applying natural pronunciation. But yeah, I mean, what you can do, get your telephone, record yourself. And if you think, hey, that person sounds a bit boring, then go up again. If that person still sounds boring, try again, okay? And then when I was at university, my French teacher said, well, your French accent's pretty good. Why is that? And I think we worked out that because I like singing French music, sounds a bit weird, I know, but I like singing French music. And when you listen to music and copy the sound, you're not reading it. And English doesn't look how it sounds, okay? So if you can just listen and repeat, you can start to develop a more natural sound. And I know Taiwanese people love KTV, or I mean, not all of them, but a lot of people like KTV. There's so many KTV places out there. Yeah, next time you go, practice English songs, okay? And listen and try and copy the way that they sound. And I promise you, your pronunciation will increase exponentially, faster and faster. Okay, let's try one more person. I just want to check the time. Can anybody see the time in front of them? Who's got the time? Not Karen, you're like an hour ahead or something. Okay, let me just take a quick look at the clock here. Oh, 12 minutes past 9, so we've got about 15 minutes. Yeah, perfect timing, I think. Okay, so yeah, I mean, actually, if you look in front of you, the language here is how you make a comment on a virtual meeting. Okay, so we looked at questions. This is the language of how to make a comment. So yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to add something here. I'd like to follow up on what Jack said. I'd like to comment on. So yeah, lots and lots of variety here. Again, look in the 3rd column. You mentioned, you brought up, you talked about, you mentioned, you described, we discussed. So yeah, lots of different verbs, active language to describe or discuss and be specific. So the language here, you know, talk about and mention and brought up and describe and discuss, they all mean something slightly different. Now, we don't have time to talk about the tiny differences in those words, but be specific with the language that you use, okay?
I have a question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like you said, maybe we need to imitate the native speaker's tone.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give me some resource that we can practice?
Yes.
Like a website or introduce some of perfect video?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Can you just make a comment can you make a comment in the chat box that I don't forget? Because
okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on right now and I'm worried that I'll forget. So yeah, if anybody has any questions that they want me to look at after today, please just pop them in the chat box and I'll try to do some research for you and send that out. But yeah, thank you for the question, Nini. There's a lot available. Next Gen Corporate Language Training, we can help you. Okay, good. So, I mean, that's actually maybe a good time to end there. So what I'd like to do now, I think this is quite a nice part of our training sessions, virtual and face-to-face, is for people to sit back, reflect a little bit on the past hour and 20 minutes, and to think, what are the key takeaways for you? what did you learn today? Hopefully you learned something. What did you learn today that you think will, is something you'd like to know more about, or something that you weren't sure of before? So yeah, just have a think. I'll give you 10, 20 seconds, and then perhaps a few of you can just share some of your key takeaways. Francis, I see your question. While people are thinking, I'm just going to read that aloud. James. Francis, first point, and this isn't your fault. My first name is Lawrence. My family name is James. But don't worry, everyone calls me James. I worked at the British Council for 8 years. They call me James. I think it's because I have 2 first names. It's kind of confusing for people. Okay, James, I have a quick question. Would you mind sharing the skills to pick up? Oh, same question. Okay, so it's basically the same question as Nini there. Yeah, I mean, yeah, how you pick up natural intonation patterns. I mean, we're kind of entering the Q&A section here. Technically, English, I think in linguistics, because I studied language at college. In linguistics, I think they say that English has a low orthographic transparency. That's the technical term, I believe, where the way that English looks is not the way that English sounds, okay? Now, if you've studied any other languages before, like German or French, when you read German, you can sound German, okay? Ich kann nächstes Monat helfen nicht, or something, whatever. Like, I haven't studied German for a long time. But when you read German, the characters, the alphabet, it sounds exactly the same. So it's kind of easy. English, not so easy. You know, I'll give you some examples. So T-H-O-U-G-H, though. T-H-O-U-G-H-T, thought. T-H-O-U-G, you know, there's loads of different ways, like that thought, through, T-H-R-O-U-G-H. Like, it doesn't matter. English doesn't look the way that it sounds. So my first point, I guess, is never read English to understand the pronunciation. You always got to close your eyes and listen. There's something in English, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, linking. Linking is where the end of one word will connect to the following word. Normally, it's where you have a consonant sound at the end of one word and a vowel sound at the end of another, at the beginning of another. So I'll give you an example. Can, C-A-N, can. And then I, can I. Now, if an English speaker speaks quickly, it'll be can I. So the N links over to the I. Can I. There's no pause. Can I? No, it's can I. And it's not just can I, because can is a function word. It's not important. It will be unstressed. So the ah sound, can, will become kun. Can I? Can I help you? Okay. Now, yeah, we can get very technical here. But basically, if you're reading English, then yeah, think, okay, are there any links in this sentence? Is there a consonant sound followed by a vowel sound? If yes, you're probably going to link it, okay? Think of another example. So I'd like to know how you can, let's go back to some language. It's easier if I have the language in front of me. Okay. Here, can you see my mouse when I do this? Yep. Okay, so Peter, I'd like to make a. So it's make a comment. Okay, so here I'm stressing make, I'm stressing comment, and A, you barely hear it. A becomes a schwa sound, okay, and it's very quiet. So you say make a comment. Okay, Nini, can you say make a comment?
Make a comment.
Yeah, and you go maker. So that K goes over to that A. Here, well, this one's difficult. Here we've got two. Now the end of two, what's the sound? It's not an O, it's not O, it's W. It's a W sound, two. Okay, so actually the end of two is a consonant sound. Okay, when you look at it, no. But when you hear it, yes. So you say to wad. So you hear a W sound will go into add, to add. I'd like to add something here. Yeah, so having that link will kind of start to make your language sound more natural. Okay, because English is all like blah, 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 mixed together. John, I'd like to add something here to what you said earlier. To what? So yeah, to, very small, less emphasis to what you said earlier. Here's an easy one. So follow up, follow up. So yeah, I'd like to follow up on what Jack said earlier. Okay, so yeah, you've got that W to the U, wap. So yeah, that's how you can kind of link your language. And then yeah, think basically whenever the word is important, you give it stress and emphasis. When it's not important, and this is a very simple way to explain, there's a very much more complex way that I can explain face to face, I think, with more time. If it's important, you say it loudly and clearly. If it's unimportant, just kind of reduce the stress and probably make it sound more like a okay? Because that, I don't know if you can see my camera, the sound is the most common sound in the English language. And it's the most common sound because it's the easiest sound for a native English speaker to make. Totally relaxed, my tongue is flat, t, f. So for, F-O-R, we say f. Thanks for calling me. Okay, I don't say thanks for calling me, I say thanks for calling me. So yeah, whenever you see one of those little grammar words, unimportant words, it's probably 90% of the time going to be a little sound in there. I'd like to add, I'd like to make a comment, to make a comment. I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to add something here. I'd like to make a comment to what you said. Follow up on what Jack said. Yeah, so on, not so much. And pronunciation is not an exact science. It can be, but because every time in pronunciation, the word before affects the word after. So it's not that to will always be to, because whatever comes before to and whatever comes after to will affect how it sounds, because it's the way the muscle in the mouth is moving. Okay, but yeah, let's not get too technical here. It's something I'm quite enjoy studying, pronunciation, but yeah, we could talk about, or I could talk about it for hours and you might fall asleep. So yeah, intonation. Intonation, again, it's a loose science. I suppose the idea is that you probably will go a little bit higher, a bit more emphasis on keywords, a little bit lower on things that are less important. But yeah, again, like I've got a book, it's called Pronunciation in Use, and it's like this thick, and it has hundreds and thousands of rules on different pronunciation and intonation depending on the grammar structure. So for example, if you have a clause before a sentence, participating in effective meetings, or let's think of another one. So if you have a clause at the beginning of a sentence, sometimes it will start higher or sometimes it will start lower. Let's look at an example. So for example here, Peter, I'd like to make a comment about something you said earlier. So Peter, I go hi, and then I step down. I'd like to make a comment about something you said earlier. So the idea there is I go hi just to get his attention. That's the impact. But yeah, typically when you have a kind of clause at the beginning of a sentence with a comma, you're going to go hi. Okay. But yeah, let me do some research and send you some resources via email. Okay. Let's just, hopefully you've had some time to think there while I was talking on and on and on. Any key takeaways from today's session? I'll probably have to pick on some people, right? I don't like picking on people. Okay, Lin Yan, you're always keen, right? Are you there?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Is there anything that you took away from today?
Yes, to be honest, I was quite a little bit surprised that we need to be indirect when we reply the questions or ask the questions.
Okay, I'm glad you're surprised because that means it was new to you. Yeah, I mean, think about the people that you're speaking to. I used to manage a team of Canadians, Americans, British people. And the way that I spoke to British people was different to the way that I spoke to Americans, and it was different to the way that I spoke to Canadian people. Because I got feedback, which is the importance of asking for feedback. And it was quite direct feedback because it was from an American colleague. And for a British person, the way that Americans speak sometimes feels quite direct. In teaching, when you meet a member of your team and you've observed them, you're a teacher manager, you might say, oh, so Brian, I noticed that you, at the beginning of the training session today, you were using lots of complex vocabulary. Could you tell me why you decided to do that? Okay, so there, could you tell me? Or I noticed that. See, I'm trying to be very polite. And that works with, I think, British people or maybe French, different cultures where they find indirect language more polite. But I would use that approach with my American colleagues and say, Lawrence, can you just tell me what I did wrong and how I can do it better? I'm like, okay, you asked for it. So yeah, you got to kind of adapt the way that you speak depending on who you're talking to. And I think this may be, I don't know, sometimes I feel like British people and Taiwanese people have a little bit more in common than British people and American people. I know like the idea in Taiwan is that you need to save face. And if you're in a meeting, I think using careful language and being diplomatic and tentative can stop you from losing somebody's face or stop you from losing face as well. So yeah, I mean, just think about who you're talking to. But I'd say in general, it's better to be a little bit indirect than too direct, because already translating from Chinese to English, the grammar will sound direct. Mm-hmm.
But do you mean the starting sentence should be indirect only? Or do you mean the actual comment also need to be indirect?
Good question. Yeah, and from my studies, and I'm always wary about making big cultural stereotypes because it depends on the age, it depends on your family, it depends on your education, et cetera, et cetera. But I understand that in Taiwan or some Asian cultures, sometimes the message itself will be indirect, and it's maybe from a Western perspective, it's hard to understand what you really mean. I would say that when dealing with Western cultures, the message itself needs to be clear and direct and open, but the language that you use needs to be indirect. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's difficult kind of balance because I guess it's almost the inverse. In Taiwan, the language, if you translate into English, is direct, but the message itself can be indirect. So we've got two kind of very different approaches to communication there that you need to consider. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good question. Good point. Any other takeaways from today? Anybody like to mention?
Hello.
Yes, Karen, good, you saved me.
Yeah, so I just want to mention that I also found myself sometimes that because I sometimes when I speak English, I'm unconsciously using the Chinese logical to translate to English directly. So I felt sometimes maybe I saying something I don't think is very direct, but for the listener, especially for the Westerner, it might sound very direct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think today Lawrence that gave us a good point that also I will remind myself more, try to use more indirect language, but more direct contents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good, Karen.
Content.
Yeah, you were breaking up slightly there. I think you're using the Wi-Fi in your hotel. But I think we got your point in the end. And yeah, I mean, the culture question is a big question. And yeah, I mean, having studied languages at university, we did a lot on intercultural communication. And my I guess final thought on that would just to be careful, I suppose, to a certain extent, because I'm from the UK, but I've lived outside the UK for many, many years. And I've lived in Taiwan for so long that actually I don't mind talking about money. I don't mind talking about physical appearance. I don't mind talking about family or whatever. But all of these topics, for somebody who's never left the UK, they might be taboo topics, okay? Or, so yeah, we've got to consider, I guess, each person at an individual level, but also kind of, yeah, consider their culture from a national point of view as well. Because everyone is different, yeah.